and realize that what we are talking about of mine who is a migrant black woman. He was working with care for elderly people, and it was horrible the conditions she was working. And she had all the goodwill. She was really trying to do her best, but she was working over 70 hours a week. She had to travel from one side to the other in Dublin by bike. The payment was very low. She had like very little time to do loads of things, and she had all the pressure on top of her, because they would say, if you don't get there in time, this. So she couldn't even say no. Like sometimes, like there was a time I was with her on her holidays. She had like 2 days of holiday, and they kept calling her again and again, like, we need you to come in, we don't have anyone else, so you need to come now and do the work, otherwise this person will die. And like, they were the ones actually receiving all the payment and getting all the profit. Like, she would receive like 10% of everything that the family was paying to them. And she had all this pressure, like, if you don't go, if you don't give up yourself, someone else will not go. So it's bad for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? Is that, or before I bring the speakers back in? Do you want to go in?
Yeah, I just want to make one point really, or two.
The famous two.
My name is Eddie Conlon, I'm the steering committee of Big for Profit. It's not a trivial thing to remove the clauses in the Constitution. It has profoundly affected women over a long period of time, and while it wasn't responsible directly for the marriage bar and so on, they give absolute cover for things like that and named women's place has been in the home. And if one reads the Bishop's statement, it's very clear that's what's upsetting them. The family is constituted by marriage has been undermined, and the primary role of women as mothers in the home has also been undermined. And that's very clear. And even the FLAC document, which a lot of people have been, has shaped a lot of people's approach to the issue, describes the clause of the Constitution in relation to women as ineffective, sexist and offensive. So it's an explicitly sexist statement in the Constitution about women. And FLAC's criticism of the new proposal is that it's an implicitly sexist statement in relation to the position of women. Now I think I prefer to get rid of an explicit sexist statement and at least have something which opens the possibility that other people can be carers too. Now that doesn't mean we're happy with this at all. We in People for Profit have, we've described our yes as a sort of unenthusiastic yes, right? But we have to, and the point was well made was at the top, the status quo doesn't change anything. In fact, it may fill up the far right. And you have to look who's on the other side. Michael McDougall, A2, the bishops, all people renowned for fighting like hell for care, public services, adequate funding for schools, for special needs, and so on, right? So they're the people who will be filled up by this. Now, I'm not saying everyone who votes no to the second one is buying into that agenda. Obviously, many people are conflicted. But what we need to do is what Catherine says, and I think People for Profit will commit to this. We want now that the issue of care is on the agenda across the various dimensions of care that you've talked about. We want now to push on with this, and I think personally there should be some sort of assembly of carers, different care organisations. They can say to each other, look, we disagreed on the referendum, but we all agree that we've got to move forward together. So I think there should be some sort of attempt to pull together a big assembly of carers and carer organisations. The point is well made by the man at the back here about who should be there and so on. People for profit in the opposition should agree to give their private members time to issues related to care in the next number of months, so we can push on the agenda there as well. And I also think before the local elections, there should be an effort to have a big mobilisation of carers to say, you made various statements, right? You gave various commitments, now we want you to deliver. Because what's distinctive about the politics of people for profit isn't necessarily what's in the Constitution, although we do care about what's in the Constitution, we fought like hell for repeal and so on, but it's the mobilisation of ordinary people to change their lives is what's central to our politics. And I think that's the logical next step from this debate, is to get a real movement going of various carers across various dimensions of care to come together and say, you made us the promises, now you better deliver.
Yeah. I'm going to let the speakers back in. I'm going to let Melissa to finish up with us. So Kathleen, do you want to, or do you don't have to know if there's anything that you want to
No,
talk about?
I'll just take up a few points that were made. I think it's very important that we open out the debate.
Yeah.
The human condition needs care. That's the girl at the back with black hair, and you've said it and I can't know anyone's name. But we can't live without it. It is, and public services are care services. I think that's a good line to start. Education, educare, comes from the Latin word, which is to nurture. The social welfare is a care service. That's what it should be. Health is care service. And I think most of them have been made into profit, as what you've just spoken about is a massive problem in this country. Profiteering on basic human need is what it is. And the exploitation of the workers, and you're absolutely right, it is overwhelmingly migrant workers, poorly paid, afraid to organise, afraid to mobilise, in private homes. And care is not a private family matter. Care is a public issue. Care at the level of the state is solidarity, care at the level of the community is solidarity with your neighbours and your friends, and then there is the family. But it is across all spheres of life. And that's why I feel we need to continue the debate, as you say, not drop it now. And that includes the rights of people who are also often, I feel so strongly about this, many people with disabilities are carers. They're in not mutually exclusive categories, the way we talk about it.
Yeah.
We would think they give fun, they give joy, they give a sense of value to other people's lives. You're not like a dependent total person who never does anything. I think that's deeply offensive, actually, including to older people whom we don't seem to think their relational lives matter at all. We think they can do with robots. That is true. That is actually what people think. Or as you said at the end there, they're paid so badly and treated so badly, they're running in the door because they have to run somewhere else and be there in no time at all. Why? Because they're mostly now hired by companies who are making money. Yeah. And how do you make money? You make money by actually paying very low wages, giving no pensions and no security to people, and then what you have unpredictable poor services. So I think there is a big call here to bring back our services into the public sphere and to have proper public services, including childcare. Yes, can I speak? You know what it costs. You want to be a millionaire, I always say, to afford childcare now. And that is a fact. You have to be very wealthy. And there is no debate here about childcare. And most women disproportionately have to give up work because they can't afford to stay at work. I'm sorry, let's not forget the gender dimension. Women, I came from rural Ireland, women were second-class citizens, absolutely, and duties in the home kept them in their serfdom. I'm sorry, that is where we were. And it's the truth for people with disabilities. It's insulting. People with disabilities are just like everybody else. They give and they take. You are not a liability in society. We're all part of the continuum of the human condition. One time or other, we will have and will be dependent if we weren't already. And I just think that that's a recognition of that. And to have that kind of debate in Ireland, would radically change how we see the whole conversation. And look at how we've capitalised everything. It's about making money. I just can't believe we've put the care of children and the care of older people, in particular, in institutions where people are looking at their share price. And that is exactly the truth.
I don't know, Kaylee, do you want to come in on anything that anyone said, or?
I feel like the more we speak openly about our personal experiences, the more people will see that it's not, like, I know people do, organisations do campaigns about highlight how great the services are, but I feel like not a lot of people actually really haven't. So I feel like having these open forums actually let people hear the reality of people like me that receive these services. So I think these open formats give people a real insight to how these services are run behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very good point. That's very important. Did you want to come back in on anything that was said, or?
Just what that gentleman said is, I think this referendum is the start of a journey rather than an end. And I think if we get a yes and we get it over the line, we can start having those conversations, but we can start mobilising and bringing, as you said, bringing caring organisations and disabled people's organisations together, rather than, this referendum has almost put one against the other, which is really unfortunate. When we all are actually wanting the same things. So I think this is the start of a journey. For us, it's the start of, as I said, that platform to push our government, whoever is in government, for better services, for better supports. And I think it is about this inclusivity, and it's including and respecting everybody. And as Kathleen said, we will all provide or require care at some points in our life. That is a reality. And we need to respect and support the people providing that care or support. Because sometimes people don't need care, but they do need support. They need personal assistant hours, they need support. So we need to widen our conversation and our language around care and support. And I do think we need to mobilise and come together. We have already said we will be pushing for certain things, like in terms of policy things, we want the means test for carers allowance abolished. That's long coming. We've been battling for 10 years. I actually think we will see that move over the next 3 years because of this conversation and this referendum. So we will use that to fight and to push for policy changes, legislation around a statutory entitlement to home care. Somebody mentioned, I think, the fair deal. There's an entitlement to nursing home care. There's no entitlement, nothing that entitles you to care in the home, in the community. Again, something we will push as a result of this. So it's very much a starting point on a journey, and I really hope we will work with one another in ensuring that we get those supports.
Very well said, Joe. Thanks very much.
I just feel that by saying yes, we're kind of closing the door.
No, we're opening the door. A carer said to me yesterday, she felt that if this was a no, it would be another door slammed in her face. So it's opening that door rather than closing it, because we can only move forward and we can only progress, and this gives us a starting point for that progression.
Did you come in briefly and then let Melissa in?
I just wanted to say, I think also the fact that we know that in the current constitution, in the second part, it says that it will exclude mothers from their economic expectations for care. I think part of the reason that they've dropped that from the new proposed one is because they realize now that most people are intelligent enough to realize that to keep carers away from that economic pressure, we can't work under a capitalist system or a for-profit system. As like Kathleen was saying with her book, care and capitalism are against each other. So I think that the reason that they've not put that in the second part, which is another thing that people said could have been preserved, they realized that if they put that in the second part, people would start to think and realize that actually the way that Ireland works as a society as an economy in this neoliberal capitalist society, it would be automatically unconstitutional to continue under a capitalist system. So I think that's why they dropped it in the second part, which is another reason why a lot of people don't like the second part, but I still agree we should still vote yes because it'll give us
a lot of applause in it. Thank you very much. Look, and thanks everybody for coming along tonight. I'm going to wrap up now and let Melissa finish up, but I'm sure if anyone wants to talk afterwards, they can. They have the chance to as well, okay? Melissa.
Thanks very much, and thanks to all the other speakers for coming along this evening and for the audience participation. I just want to start with the question about the green paper. I'm sorry for just throwing out words that we're used to talking about and not explaining it. But the green paper is about, as was explained, about reclassifying how disability allowance is paid. But I think it's one of the fundamental things that we should be immediately campaigning against. It is absolutely disrespectful of people with disabilities to expect them to undergo capacity tests on a regular basis. It has infuriated the community of disabled people, and they're having a protest next week on the 12th of March outside the Dáil. I think it's at 12 o'clock if anyone can find out between me finishing and saying, and we should be there and we should support it and we should keep that going. At the moment it's out for public consultation. I think the consultation shuts on the 15th of March or something, but as the man at the back was saying, that consultation is really important, and that they take on board all the disability rights organisations that are, because that's a fundamental part of the UNCRPD, that not about us without us, that people with disabilities have to be part of the discussion. And I'm working as a counsellor, I see an awful lot of misuse of the word public consultation. Our government and our councils and our state does not consult with the public. They ask for papers and then they tick boxes and say, I know you said that, but that's not what we're going to do. And it goes on like this. And it is an absolute disgrace. So fighting for your actual right to be consulted, it is such a simple thing, but we have to fight every minute of the day for it. And I know Fred's question about a yes/no being a better option, because I think that we unfortunately are not being given straightforward options in this, and that is the problem. And I think we have to take out the archaic language of sexism. And there are some questions, some of the people watching online are part of what our branch WhatsApp group. They've been asking particular questions that kind of relates to that the second part of that constitution moves the obligation of care from the state to the family. There is no obligation on care from the state at the moment. None. It's not coming from the state, and it's not moving it onto the family. It is actually moving it from only women to the family. It is not good enough. It is really not good enough. But it gets rid of that fundamentally sexist and offensive piece of the constitution. Unfortunately, we don't get to choose between those two things. You're only, if you want to get rid of that, you're getting the other one in as well. But that means, the other question that was asked was, it doesn't support people with disabled people or people with disabilities. It doesn't. But it doesn't preclude us fighting for rights for disabled people. There's nothing in it that precludes us from doing this. There was another question about private care, and when Kaylee talks about experience as a care receiver, and somebody else was talking about care providers who are pushed around from house to house with barely a minute in between, and this is serving nobody at all except the for-profit companies that are making an absolute fortune out of it. And a fortune has been made out of privatised care, not only within the companies, but also within the home for years. Sinead was telling me earlier on today that in 2019, globally, it was estimated that the care that women provided across the world amounted to 10.8 trillion. Now, I have no idea how you would estimate that, but I'm sure Sinead, but that it's a phenomenal amount of money saved by the state by pushing care into families or pushing care into underpaid people on carers allowance. and then companies make a fortune out of it. Somebody said that Kathleen was saying how duties in the home kept women in serfdom. It did, but it also pushed many working class women out to work in precarious work, while also having to deal with the duties in the home. The status quo did not serve women. It didn't serve disabled people. It didn't serve carers. Why would we vote for the status quo? And voting no is voting for the status quo. So while there are all sorts of problems with this, I think we should vote yes. And I think we should. And I think the fact that the government has pitted two groups of people against each other is really the most disgraceful thing. The most disgraceful thing that they've done. But we don't get rights. We don't get rights conferred on us. We certainly don't get them conferred on us by a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael government. We have had to fight for every single right we have. People have the right to vote because they fought. Women have the right to vote because they fought. We fought for repeal. We fought not to have the 8th Amendment put into the Constitution, and then we fought from 83 until 2018 to get it out of the Constitution. But when it came out of the Constitution, we had no right to abortion in this country until there was legislation. And then, even when there was legislation, we're still having to fight for access. You fight for your rights, and we're going to have to fight for rights for people with disabilities and carers over the next period. And the fact that it's on the agenda now, I think, leaves us in a better position. So whatever the outcome is next week, I think we should continue that fight. Thanks very much.
That finishes our meeting tonight. Thank you everybody that took the time to come along. Thank you, and thanks to the speakers.
Thanks, Hazel.